Hey everybody and welcome to Like Behind the Cover. I'm Taylor and today we're talking about how I build characters. So this is specifically the way that I do it. I know a lot of different ways that people do it, which we'll talk more about at the end, because in this video I'm specifically going to show you how I work through those things, obviously, because that's what I just said. So I'm going to show you, I have 2 to 3 types of character sheets that I'm going to show you. So let's get into it. So yes, this is probably the girliest makeup I have ever done. Okay, so here's the 10 pages full of characters for the book that I am planning right now. Just finished the character part. I think I counted in my vlog, so it'll be in my vlog, but I think I had like 20 characters or something in this. And the first page we're going to talk about is probably the most important to you, which is the ones I use for main characters. So I'm going to go over the one for my main character, and I'll walk you through step by step everything that I have in there that you'll want to answer for your character if character sheets are a thing that you like to do. So first thing I do, I have full name, their age. This can be specific, like 17 and a half or just 25, and then their birthday. Mine, I don't put a date on it because I know the age, so the date isn't very specific to me, because that, whatever date, for example, this character's birthday is October 25th. There's not a year there. I know she's 17. This is her age when the book starts. I have hair. I explain the color, its length, and any other properties of it if it's worn in a certain way. My main character has very long, straight, black hair that she typically wears in braids during fighting or things like that. That would be what I would put here. Eyes, build, so slim, stocky, buff. Anything specific about their build and their general appearance, that's what you would put here. And then I have another category for other physical features. For this, I might include skin color, any scars or moles or notable things on their face. If you have freckles like me, that would be under this section. And then obviously this is a pretty big category. You can put pretty much anything else but their physical appearance in this section. Flaws. So we go right from appearance stuff right into the big stuff. So flaws, this could be their big flaw, which you will usually have for your main character. And it can also be smaller flaws. Like, for example, my character is very sheltered. This is not her big flaw. It kind of contributes to it, but being sheltered means that she doesn't know a lot about the world, and she doesn't know pretty much anything about the world she's about to become part of. So it is still a flaw. It's still something that I want to be an obstacle for her going through the book. Next, I put nationality. For this book, it is more specific because we have a tournament taking place where people from different continents, magical people from different continents, are coming to this one thing that happens in the magical community in the book, but it might not be important for you. For me, I have a very specific place they're coming from to represent the continent, and then specifically where they come from. So say all your characters are, for example, American, it doesn't matter, right? Then I have their want versus need. Their want is something at the beginning of the book they want. Their need is something that they that even though it goes against what they want, is what they actually truly needed, and this really drives a lot of character progression in your book. I think Brandon Sanderson's lecture on characters has a lot about this if you're interested in it. For me, my characters are magical, so I do have a section here for power. You might not, but you might have specific things from your book that you'll want to add here. For example, if you are having an epic fantasy, you might want to put their magical race. Or, for example, in my last book, I had a section for weapons. That's not important for these people because they're purely using their power. But in my last book, it was important, and they all wielded different weapons that symbolized different things for them. So that's something that I would consider. Definitely add your own categories to suit your book. Then I have their best quality. I think this one's pretty self-explanatory. What makes this character good? What are the things that fuel this character? What's the best thing about them? Why do other characters like them? Pet peeves. This is not a very deep category, but it can definitely create some conflict with other characters who might do similar things. Like, for example, if one of your character's pet peeves is cockiness and you have a cocky character, you can kind of show, obviously, the tension there, right? Then I have favorite color and food. Again, this is not a very deep category, but is something that you know about your character, and almost everybody has a favorite color and favorite food. So I also think that this is cute because if you have a little bit of a romance, you can show that person is remembering things about them. So I think that's cute and I like having it. Hobbies. So your main character might be a pianist and my main character might love anime. What do they like to do in their off time, right? Obviously right now they're having some kind of big conflict, but oftentimes who they are as a person, the things that they really enjoy, can show how they view the world. So if you are a painter, you might go to a forest and say, oh my goodness, like I wish I could paint this, or these colors are beautiful and deep and I want like this exact color in my palette. Whereas somebody who views the world differently would not see the forest in that way. So I think this is a cool category. Wow, I'm so lame. Biggest self-doubt. This will also be pulled into your character's arc. It will be something that you probably want your character to overcome for the most part, and so I think it's a really important category to have. Then I have optimist or pessimist. Again, this doesn't seem like it would be a huge thing to know about your character. It does kind of shape how they view the world, right? So my main character of my last book was like a realist leaning pessimist, and this book my character is super optimistic about everything. Like has had maybe a difficult life, but has just had a like good attitude, like can-do spirit through the whole thing. Whereas if everything that's going to happen to this main character would happen to another character, they would take that differently and that would shape them into a different person. So I think this is another important category to recognize, like how is this character seeing the world? How are they going to handle the things that you throw at them in your novel? Next I have fears. I usually like to give my character more of a actual human fear because I'm usually doing fantasy and like the fears are I will fail and the world will be destroyed. You know what I mean? So, you know, some of my characters are afraid of spiders as well as like these other things that have really pushed their character forward, like crippling social anxiety, you know, that kind of thing. So these are more human kind of fears, things that you might be afraid of. And then I have talents. For me, this ties into some of their magic, but also just like what are their talents as a human? Like maybe your character is really good at making friends and making people root for them. Or maybe your character is really analytical and can look at a situation and kind of figure out what all of the people are going to be doing in that situation and how they're going to react. This will help you in writing your book, but is also just like good to know, like what's your character good at. Even if your character, for example, doesn't think they're very good at something, they're not able to see it, you know, so you can show how other characters are reacting to them in those ways. Next I'm gonna like actually just show you. So this is my whole character sheet right at the bottom here. This is something that Brandon Sanderson talks about, and I'll put it up on the screen so I don't have to hold it up this whole time. Most characters have 3 scales, likability, proactivity, and competence, and your characters are going to start on the scales not super great in at least one category, and then throughout the book will be going up in those categories. This is part of their arc. So for example, my character starts off as very likable, but not competent or proactive in any way. And as we go through the book, those scales are going to slide up. So I represent how they start with a black and then where they end the book with blue so that you can see that they increase in certain things over time. So this creates like part of who they are as a character. Next, I write a whole paragraph about my character. It explains her childhood, it explains her family dynamic, the things that are important to her, the kind of person she is, what she likes to do, and how she reacts to the beginning of the story. You can also have them, like, you can also write about how they're going to react to the rest of the story. I wouldn't do this like beat for beat. Personally, you can, but I definitely have like a general idea of how they are taking in things in the story, and that's what I write in this big paragraph. And then at the very end, I have her arc. How does she grow? What is she overcoming and how does she get there? That kind of thing. And that is my entire character profile. Here's my main character. It looks like this. It's about a page and a half. Some people are going to write more. For me, this gives me just enough that I need. It tells me everything about her, especially that paragraph I think is important. If you just did all the categories but didn't actually write about their childhood and things like that, you wouldn't be going as in-depth as I think you should. And then, of course, the arc is one of those really important parts. It might also be worth it to show that in this section, because she has a romance, it's not a I'm trying to find it, sorry. It's not a specific character thing. It's a relationship thing. I have under this section the relationship conflict and how that gets resolved. You might want to do that as well. If there's no romance, there could still be relationship conflicts with people like family and friends. There's pretty much always going to be some kind of relationship conflict within your story. And so I think it's important to know what that is as well. And I tied that in with on my character sheet. Then, so I have two main characters. And then I have two characters who become more of a main character, but aren't with us for the whole thing, and they don't drive the plot. The other two are kind of helping and are involved, but don't really make that choice themselves. They don't really drive the plot. So these people are still important, but they're a little less important to the story. So I'm going to go through kind of a couple things. I just changed a couple things, especially because these two will become more main characters if I write a second book, which I probably will. I can feel it already. I went into this book saying it's going to be a standalone with series potential because that's what modern publishing really likes. Modern traditional publishing, I should say. And that's why I picked this one to do. And I can already feel that I am itching for a sequel, but it will have a sufficient ending if not. Anyway, the biggest change I did here is instead of giving these characters a want versus need, I gave them motivation. We won't be able to really see their want versus need because we don't really see anything in them. They're not point of view characters or anything. So giving them a motivation shows me what they're striving for in the book along with our main characters. Shows me what they want to be doing. And so I just thought that was much more useful for these guys than a want versus need. These characters do still have a full paragraph about them and an arc, but it just won't be at the forefront like my other two characters. Then I get on to some of the smaller characters, and they don't get full pages because they're not as important usually, and I'm going to just go through how I do those. So I do name. Gender, did I forget to write gender in the last one? I think I forgot to tell you gender now that I just said that, but I know their gender, so it's fine. So gender, hair, eyes, other appearance. I want to know how they look, and I want to know how I'm going to explain them or have explained them in the past so that I can keep that consistent. Again, I have a specific category for my book on their nationality and magic-ish stuff. Then I have their personality, which depending on the character is mostly just a couple of traits. Like for this one, for example, optimistic, overbearing, kind, or cold, easy to anger, and calculating, things like that. So I can kind of know how they're going to react to things, but I don't go as in-depth. And then I have role. This just tells me who they are to the story or my characters. For example, one of them is going to be my main character as a mom. So that's where you would put that, or if they are a leader somewhere, or if they are an owner of a coffee shop that your characters usually go to, something like that. This is where you're going to put, like, who is this person to the story? And then this is another category for me and might be for other fantasy writers, which is their power. What's their magic looking like? What that magic do? I have a bunch of characters that I went through like that. Too many characters. I would kind of recommend giving your villains somewhere in between this first one that I talked about that's really in-depth and this one that's not that in-depth. I think that you can go and do a full one for your villain. I didn't. I just don't think we need to know as much as we talk about in the full character sheet. For example, like I don't really care about my villain's favorite food unless that's applicable to the story, right? So I try to find a middle ground between these two. What is important? For example, motivation isn't something I include in this smaller section, but it is pretty important to who your villain is, right? So go through everything that I said, which will all be in the description, by the way. I'm going to write that all down, and kind of figure out what is important for your villain to have and for you to understand about your villain before moving forward. And then the last thing I do for characters is I get a blank sheet, and on the top I write miscellaneous characters. And as I write any character that might show up again, I'm going to write their name that I gave them at the time of the story and their general appearance and their role so that I kind of know in case I'm going to come up against them again. Come up against them. I don't know what that means. See them again. I think I gave the example in my video showing how I organize my writing as maybe a cook at a place everybody is at. Not a main character. You're probably not running into them a lot, but you're going to want to know how they look, what their name is, and that they're the cook in order to the next time you're character goes to the kitchen, be like, oh, it's, you know, Norman the cook kind of thing, right? I also do random guards, like kind of whatever. In case you see these people again, you're just gonna have a list. It's like 1 or 2 sentences, and I don't have any characters on it yet because I haven't met any characters that aren't super involved in the plot, but I will definitely use that, and I suggest you use that too, so that when you are going to the same place later, you know that this character will be there. So for me, this works really well at figuring out who my characters are and fleshing them out. Usually when I start this, I know their general ideas, their arc, and things like that, but this really helps me learn who they are more as like a person. By the end of doing the long character profiles, I feel like I know the characters very well. I know where they come from, I know what drives them and why that thing drives them, you know, like how that thing became important to them, and I know what route they're taking through the story. So for some people, filling this out won't do that for them. For me, it does, because it starts to tick things off in my brain where I go, oh yeah, they would be like this, right? Because when I get to optimist or pessimist, that's not something I already know about my character. But by the time I get there, I go, well, they couldn't be a pessimist because of this, right? Like, or they really wouldn't be a realist. They're definitely more of a pessimist because of this, because of what's happened, because of their arc and how they shape the story, right? So this really helps me. I'm now going to talk about some things I've heard that really help other people with figuring out their characters. I've heard somebody talk about, as they go through their day, pretending that their character is kind of going through their day with them as well. This would be like, for breakfast, oh, what does my character usually eat for breakfast? How does my character usually wake up? To, I'm going to my job, what's my character's job? Or what's class like for my character? That kind of thing. I think that this could definitely be helpful for some people. I've also heard of the method of writing a scene from their perspective. So at least one of your main characters will have a point of view, but taking another main character and giving them a point of view scene that's not going to go in the novel, but will kind of help you understand what they're thinking during this scene, so that you kind of learn about that character a little more. I know that some people do like a full interview with their character and almost let them respond, where you're the interviewer, like, what do you like to do in a day? And you could write it all out as you're doing it. And so all the questions you want to know, you could ask about them. And a lot of these methods, just so you know, can work in conjunction with the character sheets. You can do all this stuff before doing the character sheets and then fill it out, that kind of thing. So don't feel like you have to stick to only one method. Try a couple things, see what sticks. And finally, I know that a lot of people will take a Myers-Briggs test or Enneagram, I think is what it's called, test as their character to see kind of what their character lies as on those spectrums, and that can kind of help them to know who their character is. Again, I think this one works really well. You can do it with the character sheet, and you can kind of go, oh, well, maybe if they're like, I don't know, maybe if they're a type 8, this is kind of going to be their fear because they're so focused on this, that kind of thing. So I think that can be really helpful. For me, I've never done it. I kind of think on the spot, although I will tell you that when I was doing minor characters who are going to super be a part of the plot, I was doing like 15 characters. And coming up with who they were when I didn't know them was interesting. And what I would do is just do a random Myers-Briggs, and it would show me a random Myers-Briggs, and I would look on that and they'd be like, these people are usually this, and I would do that. And that was really helpful. And I didn't do that for even most of my characters, because honestly what happened was, for example, I got somebody who was really focused on what they were doing and felt really goal-oriented and like felt that they had a lot on their shoulders, right? And then you go, okay, so what is an interesting dynamic that another person who spends a lot of time with this character is going to have with them? So maybe now this person is unfocused and likes to party, and even though they're in a really serious situation, is kind of like, whatever. And that's an interesting dynamic. And then, so I hope you see how that can kind of like snowball so that you create interesting relationships between characters. I do think Myers-Briggs or Enneagram or any of those other things that some people might like could be really helpful. There's lots of ways to figure out your characters. I'm sure you can Google it and find tons. These are some of the ones I hear most prominently and also that have worked for people that I know. So I hope they help you. Like I said, the character sheets have always been a great method for me because by the time I'm finished doing them, I feel like I really know who my character is and how they're going to take on the novel I'm about to throw at them. So I hope that it works for you too. And again, in the description, I'm going to have the full list of everything that I have in mind so that you can kind of use it or edit it to what works for you. So thanks for watching. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you want to see more like this. For the rest of the month of October, I'm doing all my Preptober planning for my NaNoWriMo novel. So next up, I'm going to be doing world building and outlining, and that's so fun. Have a great day.